and our newest sponsor, Sticker You, where you can get your stickers on Queen Street or order anywhere in the world. If you'd like to talk to Humble and Fred, call 1-833-437-8465. That's 1-833-HF-STINK. And now from the worldwide headquarters of the Humble and Fred Show, here are Humble and maybe Fred.
Well, no, you would say, just here's Humble Howard. Just try that.
Oh, here's Humble Howard.
Don't try the whole thing again. Start the whole thing again.
The following episode.
It's great to have you all here. That Larry that Phil's talking about is a award-winning broadcaster, podcaster, writer, raconteur, storyteller, and a friend of mine for now going on 3 decades.
Yes.
All right, Larry Fedoruk, everybody. That's what we're talking about. Who are we talking about, Phil? Larry. Mm-hmm. Larry.
Hey, Humble and Fred Radio. Hey, Howard. How are you?
Larry.
Hey. It has been 3 decades. And, by the way, thank you for saying raconteur. One of my favorite words, and something I always thought, oh, I could be a raconteur.
You not only
Sounds
could
fantastic.
you are.
Well, maybe I am.
People should know that.
Yeah.
Recently, we had Larry on the show, as we often do after careers or careers. We're like radio post-mortem. That's right. It's true, though. People come on, hey, I just got recently packaged.
Suddenly crushed under a big corporate shoe.
Can I come talk to you guys?
Can I just weep at your microphones?
Larry, for a very long time, was our favorite radio talk show host. And I'm not just saying that because separately and together, Fred and I used to talk about how much we admired and admire what you do and did at
and
CKT.
You reached out a number of times.
Many times.
That, and thank you for that.
Larry was the afternoon, midday host at CKTB, a Bell station in St. Catharines for a very long time.
Almost 20 years, like days short, weeks short of 20 years.
And the reason we admired you so much is because unlike a lot of the, sort of regular talk shows, which was all topics and outrage and listeners calling in from, Jackson Triggs Winery or whatever. Well, you just did it on
very Niagara there.
Well, I was trying to think of Vineland from 20 Valley. Go ahead, caller.
Beansville.
Yeah, I'm calling from 20 Valley. But what we always loved about your show was that it was almost like a 3-hour monologue in some ways.
At times, yeah. I mean, towards the end, I started interviewing more people, which I loved having guests on. But that was kind of it. It's like, here's what I think, and here's some guests. And I didn't necessarily, I don't really like the outrage and the let's divide people up into 2 camps and get the opinions going.
I think I've asked you this before, and we're going to get to some show. Larry's going to hang in. We have great guests this morning. Bill Brio is going to be in talking TV.
Love Bill.
Bill, and this will be good because I told Larry our guest was Bill Brio. You've had him on your show many times, but never met him in person.
No, I don't think I ever have, unless it was like way long ago, and he's the best. So
yeah, he's great.
He's the best.
So we'll talk about television ratings, obviously the Super Bowl yesterday. Phil, you aware of that?
Yes, the bull is super.
Thank you. We'll talk about the Super Bowl. We'll get your thoughts. We've got Dan Duran weather coming up. Of course, you can always connect with us. We're live on Facebook, live on Twitch TV. You can also call some old Larry Fedoruk fans from the Niagara region. 1-833-437-8465 is the number. And, of course, online, Humble Fred Radio.
How about a Facebook post where my old fan from Toronto, Barbara, posted a picture of Humble Howard and the Breakfast Club coffee mug.
What?
Did you see that?
I did not. On your Facebook page or on mine?
On that post that I made on Facebook, similar to the one on Twitter, with I'm looking forward, which is true.
Which was very
being
nice
on the show today, and a lot of reaction. And she found, and I've known her for years since I was at CFDR.
Oh yeah,
and
there
she's
it
a
is.
huge fan, and she's a great collector of memorabilia. And she had one of your mugs from back in the day when it was Humble Howard and the Breakfast Club featuring Larry Fedoruk.
Yeah, for you Humble and Fred people who don't remember or wouldn't remember, I left CFNY The Edge after only being with Fred for about a couple of years. I got this job offer to go work at The Mix, or CKFM, which became The Mix, and I was working with you. And I want to say Carla, but I think it was Maureen Holloway.
It wasn't Catherine McCutcheon there at some point.
Okay. But at some point, you and Carla went on
Yes.
to do a show together.
Yeah.
But for a brief time, it was Humble Howard and the Breakfast Club. Like brief, like 15, 17 months, because I came back. I literally left in May of 91, and Fred and I rejoined our journey. By the way, I just want to say, I'm tired of people saying journey in space. Just that's all. Aren't you? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like the sands of time.
Like,
almost.
no, I'm just anytime I'm in a conversation now with anyone, it's like, well, they're on this journey. I'm like, sure. Stop it. Yeah, well, they're in the cannabis space. Please stop talking now with journeys and spaces. But for a very brief time, so we worked together from 91, May, and I went back to CFNY Edge 102 in August of 92. After that, your career, it was a bit sketchy for me. I didn't know what happened to you. Where'd you go?
It was a bit sketchy.
You worked with Carla.
I worked at CFTR with Tom Rivers, who then came to 99.9.
After me?
Yes.
Okay.
At some point. His health was not tip-top at the time, so he didn't last that long.
Well, it got worse.
And there's also really easy ways to just tick off our boss at the time. And,
yes.
And Tom was really good at that.
Yes.
Which I admired about him, and I miss those kind of people in radio today, just kind of like, how do we make trouble?
No,
You know, I love those
Yeah.
people. So, and Tom was like that. So he didn't like. So then it became, and Carla was with us at the time. So then it became me and Carla for, I think, year and a half before they just cleaned out the morning show.
So at what point did you transition to talk radio, and what year would you have started? So 20 years ago, so you would have started there in
Yeah, I was actually about
2000.
Yeah, I was actually about 99 when I started there part time because I was unemployed, and I had worked at KISS when it was KISS Country.
Right.
And there was a lot of people from the CFTR days at KISS, and it was really nice. And I not that I'm a big fan of country or not a fan of country, but to be fired from the mix and the next day literally to get a call from somebody and say, hey, don't do anything until you call us, we're interested. And I was like, you know, you didn't have a job for me, but it was so nice to just get a call. People care. And so I was there for about almost 4 years on a morning show. And then after a couple of years, do you know Eric Thomas, Raceline Radio?
Yeah, of course. He was.
He was at 99.9 for a while, too. He did sports.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I think I worked with Eric's wife, didn't I? Who was there? Didn't Eric's
Janice.
wife? Maybe I
No,
didn't.
no.
I don't know.
So just to really draw out the story. No, I won't.
No, please continue.
But no, he called me one day and said, you know, out in St. Catharines, CKTB, they're looking for some fill-in. Why don't you give her a call? And I did, and part-time, and then full-time, and sort of lucked into it.
Well, Fred and I have said this again, to your face, behind your back. Yeah. It just seemed odd that somewhere along those 2 decades that, you know, the station here in Toronto, which is fine, you know, and news talk, and it's great. But, you know, you have to do something different on radio these days. And you would have been something different a long time ago. Again, just because there's so much of that conflict, outrage talk style, that to have somebody that can have a conversation with a listener in the way that you did. I once listened to you. I don't know what I was doing in Hamilton, but from Hamilton to downtown Toronto, and I just listened straight to, and you had no guests, and it was just you talking about a couple of things, and I thought, this is what radio is great at. It's just engaging one guy talking to me, and it's too bad there isn't more of it.
Yeah, you know, that's why, and I'm not trying to work in my podcast into the conversation.
Oh, I'm going to get to it.
But
We're getting to it.
But it's storytelling. That's all.
Yes.
That's my podcast is. That's what I like to do. I like to tell a story. I like to. I feel I can tell a story, and you know, that's kind of where I've gone.
It's funny when you run into people that aren't very good storytellers. You know, I was saying to Phil.
Can I name
Phil
names?
Well, I will. Phil gives you a lot of detail, but that's
terrible
because Phil's a genius. And sometimes people that are really smart, Phil can, because they remember too much detail.
Yeah. Well, I'm there too. Sometimes.
And well, no, but there's detail that pertains to the topic.
Yeah.
But some people just don't know how to do the headline. You know, they get to the really juicy parts too late. And I said to Phil, you know, when anyone says, to make a long story short, it's too late. Anyone who says that has already gone past the... So we're going to talk about Larry's podcast. It's called I Was 8. We'll get to that after Dan Duran checks in here in another couple of minutes. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, including today, Phil tells me that there is a Germanic association with the virus.
Well, it involves more than one country.
Well,
scientifically,
yes.
they're all researching, but I read from the German source.
But there's the source that tells us the Germans have discovered a Scheisse connection, as they do. You know, I mean, I don't know if you guys are, as Norm Macdonald would say, I don't know if you're fans of history. But, you know, the Germans at one time were not known for as much poo as they have become. I kind of like it, actually. I'm going to explain what I mean after Dan Duran. That's
all right.
Also, I had a just an amazing encounter with technology yesterday. I got all excited. You know, old people, you know, when we discover some new piece of technology, I want to get into that. I want to get your thoughts later, Larry, about Super Bowl.
Oh,
the
yes.
Super Bowl.
Okay. And halftime? Can we talk about halftime too?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
okay. This is Super Bowl 54.
Yes.
It's L-I-V, right?
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, but L-I-V is 54.
Yes.
Okay. The problem is the logo they used for the Super Bowl. This is the only part of the Super Bowl I'll get into before Dan. I don't know if you saw the logo. Go check it out. It's an L, which is 50, and then the last two characters are an I and a V, which is 4. The problem is, in between those is the Super Bowl Lombardi trophy that also looks like an I.
Okay.
So the logo looks like it's L-I-I-V. Like, and every time they would flash the logo, Sean, did you see it? Every time they flash the logo, I'm like, is no one caught this? Because it's supposed to be L-I-V, Super Bowl 54.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. It
throws you off. It throws you off because the trophy. Show Larry. Somebody show Larry.
I'm gonna put a picture up here.
Yeah, you saw it.
I know the
but
trophy.
it's ridiculous.
I know what the trophy looks like. Yeah.
Like, was there nobody in the meeting that went, okay, this is a bit confusing. It's L-I-I-V.
That's not a number.
No, it's not a number. Show him. You see what I mean?
It's horrible.
But doesn't that okay? So it's not just me. I found that confusing.
Why don't you make the Lombardi Trophy the I?
Right. Thank you.
Is that
how
where you were going?
Wouldn't that have been so much better?
More
L
obvious.
Trophy V.
Yeah.
L Lombardi Trophy.
Right.
Which looks like an I.
It has the football is the dot on the I.
Like I turned it on, I guess, 20 minutes before the game, and that's the first thing I saw, and I'm like, what? There's not 2 I's in what super? I kept looking up. What Super Bowl is it?
Live?
Well, just the typo
Right.
of the headlines in black and white. I was like, Super Bowl live. It's live.
I know. Live.
Where's the E? Because I'm a moron.
That's why he is brilliant. See, just make the trophy the I, dot the I with the ball.
Right.
Which is already on the trophy.
Which is on the trophy.
Got to brush up on your Latin.
Anyway, that's the first thing to.
Yeah, because
Roman.
Sorry.
Easy
Roman
there, Phil.
numerals.
Come on.
Latin
numerals.
No.
I don't know my Latin numerals. All right. Dan Duran, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Do you understand what's happening right now? Larry Fedoruk, talk show darling, radio legend.
It's great to have him in the house.
Hey, Dan, a legend. Nice to hear you.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard this story last week. I was out with Dan Duran at a moving picture show at a film. Yeah. Oh, Dan's
The
gone.
cinema?
At the cinema. Dan's gone.
Hello.
Oh, are you still
I'm
there?
here. I don't know what happened there.
Well,
yeah,
it said
still here.
poor
I
internet
don't know what
connection.
From Peterborough. Yeah.
So I was just
happened. Oh, really?
telling.
Yeah, it might be.
I was just telling Larry that you and I were at a moving picture show, and we came out of the cinema, and somebody
Was it a talkie?
was a talkie. Dan was playing piano, and we come out of the movie, and someone sees me. They go, "Hey, Humble Howard." I go, "Hey, nice to meet you. What's your name?" He goes, "Ray." I go, "Nice to meet you, Ray." He goes, "Oh, I love your show." I'm like, "Thanks." Then Dan comes around the corner, and I said, "Ray, this is Dan Duran." Doesn't say hi, doesn't say nice to meet you, just says this. Legend. Like, honest, one word.
Wow.
One word. legend.
Cool.
So
That's how I'm introducing myself now, by the way.
Dan Duran, you're going to be guest fretting tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to that.
And
coming
Wednesday.
to the city, yeah.
And I just don't know when to either bring this subject up or post the picture. I think it's one of those things I want to tease for a couple days, maybe till Wednesday. Because Wednesday, Freddie's checking in from Mexico. And what I'm getting at, everybody, is on Thursday's show, we spoke to Fred's wife, Delise, who's a bit, germ aware.
Oh, nicely said.
I don't know if it's a phobia. She's has a high awareness. And so she, because of the flu, was trying to convince Fred that they should wear masks on the plane. And I found this so hilarious, and we got her on the phone. She's like, seriously going to do this? So on Wednesday, I will release the pictures that Fred sent me of them on the plane, Dan, wearing surgical masks. Oh, good. Like, I said to my girlfriend, Rachel, GFR, I said, I'm going to now look at my life as in two halves or two parts. The part before I saw Fred in a surgical mask on a plane and after, because I'm forever changed. We're all going to be changed when we see it.
Were other people on the plane wearing it?
No, they were not. And the thing about it is, they're loosely fitting. Right. They don't even fit snugly.
No.
It doesn't. It looks like they came on to paint the plane. They do. They look like they're doing drywall. They're not even fitting that well. Like, anyway, I don't know if he kept it on for the whole flight or how he had his snacks.
At least it was a surgical mask and not the full gas mask thing, right. Which would actually be protective, I guess.
But I just looked at it, and I didn't know what to do with the information. So Wednesday, when Fred checks in, Dan, we will release the Fred picture. Dan, I always thought those surgical masks were more to keep your breath from going somewhere as opposed to preventing it from coming in.
That's right.
Yeah. Though I guess so. You're to protect the patient. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
While you're doing surgery, so that you don't breathe into their open, gallbladder or whatever. I don't really know. I claim to be a doctor, but I'm not 100% sure how surgery works. I know you open people up and then some stuff happens. And
Try not to leave anything in there.
That's right.
That's a rule. That's number one.
Yeah, that really is the number one rule. Try not to make sure you have all your stuff.
That's right. Don't lose your keys.
But Dan makes a good point, really. How are you being protected from the flu? Dan?
Yeah.
How are you and is your family, everyone's okay in Peterborough? With the scare, the epidemic, the pandemic?
No diseases that I've come across lately here.
Well, that's good.
Disease-free.
Well, let's get to the weather here in a second. Larry doesn't really... Larry's not aware of the Dan Duran song, so we're not going to force him to sing it. So, Phil, I think we're going to need you to do two parts. So I'll start it, then you do Fred's part, then you come back in with your part. Sean?
Yep.
Are you ready?
Pick her up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Dan, can I just mention one more thing about the flu?
Yeah, sure.
No, I know you're raring to get to the weather. Here's the thing. People are so freaked out. But I'm going to tell you where I think the real death toll is going to come from. I think it's going to come from all those people that are making coronavirus and Lyme jokes. They're going to be killed. Eventually, those people will all be killed by people sick of hearing you go, hey, if you have a coronavirus, why don't they just put a lime in it? Those people will eventually be.
I did the post on Facebook like 3 weeks ago. If you have corona and Lyme disease, is it corona with Lyme?
Yeah.
And the first comment was, well, I was waiting for someone to go, well, thank you. You were waiting.
Here you go.
I'm not proud. I'll be first.
Yeah, but by the way, first to the
deleted, by the way.
First to the post is fine. If you're doing 3 weeks later, what about the virus? Maybe they should put Lyme. You must be killed. All right, Dan, that's all I have to say. Now, here we go.
All right, okay.
Dandaran weather, weather Dandaran.
Dandaran weather, weather Dandaran. Dandaran weather, weather Dandaran. Dandaran weather, weather Dandaran.
I know Larry's disappointed because he thought he's probably thinking I could have done that. I could have been part of that nonsense.
Takes
In
practice.
your show prep, you should have just gone through a little quick one there. I think it lacks
listen.
when that voice. There's a missing voice in that whole chorus. I find.
I can't believe Dan thinks any part of the show is rehearsed.
No, I love
before.
that. In your show prep. My show prep was that joke about the coronavirus and lying. That was my show prep. I said I did that joke for the first time on Friday night. It went over quite nicely. Dan,
Yes.
tell us about the weather.
Well, all the animals did their predicting on the weekend.
All the edibles?
Yeah.
All the edibles.
Oh, man.
the
All
animal-
the edibles. Go ahead, Dan. Yeah, the Puxatawny. Yeah, the ground pigs.
Yeah, that's it. There's the Shubenectady Sam and the Wyerton Willie and
too many.
well, what else is there? The
Puxatawny Phil.
Puxatawny film.
Yeah.
Balzac Billy in Calgary.
Now, most of them, it seemed, they seemed split. Some were predicting 6 more weeks of winter, I think.
Yes, like
And
Lucy the
others were
Lobster.
predicting
thought
a
that.
Sanders win in Iowa.
Yeah, but when you add most of them up, it comes to an early spring. Even though Lucy the Lobster and Shubenectady Sam both thought that it would be
Okay,
6
well, the thing is that at one time, I don't know, this might have been cute 100 years ago, but now they're
Yeah.
just trying to, every jurisdiction, it's like Jimmy the Gecko predicts it's just like Arthur the Rabbit in...
The zoo panda.
I know. Our town has nothing. Let's get a groundhog.
No, exactly.
We have no reason for anyone to come to our town ever.
Yeah.
Well, we could get a groundhog.
Let's import a groundhog to get folks all riled up about a Winterfest. But Dan Duran, I know we had some snowfall in January, which is now finished, but I thought January was pretty mild overall.
You're right, because we had more rain in January than almost forever. So it was a relatively mild month, and we're actually starting February off pretty mild as well, a little bit above seasonal for the next few days, and then we're kind of getting close to seasonal as we get into Thursday and Friday. Like if you're looking for snow, you're gonna see a little dusting. I think you saw that on the weekend. At least it was up here every day. Overnight there was a bit of snow coming down, and a couple less than a centimeter or so for tonight and into tomorrow a little bit. But by the time we get to Thursday and Friday, that's when we're expecting about somewhere in the 5 centimeter range, somewhere in there. So we might get 5 to 10 centimeters. But it's a little early to say yet, but that's kind of where it's going to be. But the temperatures, like I said, it's going to be really warm today, like 5-6 degrees for the high today, and then a little bit cooler tomorrow with around 0-2 degrees, somewhere in there, and then getting below 0 on Wednesday into Thursday, somewhere in there. But still above seasonal until we get to the weekend.
Why is it?
There you go.
There's not, when you say the weekend, like it's not like a big storm a coming, is there?
No, it's closer to seasonal, which is like like -2 or so is seasonal for Toronto. And it might get to -5.
I
only up
only
to
asked
-5
because
on Saturday.
GFR and I are flying out of here on Sunday. I just don't want any, kind
Hiccups.
of big hiccups in the storms. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry, ladies
partly-
and gentlemen, we've canceled all flights for the next 14 days.
Yeah, no, that's you're good.
Dan
You're
Duran
getting
Weather
out
is brought to you by Dan Duran. For all your Dan Duran needs, go to danduran.com. Dan Duran live in the studio tomorrow. And, of course, staying in the residence tonight, we are making chicken thighs for Dan Duran. Just so
Are we?
Yes.
Good.
GFR.
We're eating in.
Well, Rachel's going to be here, so she wanted to make some food for you. And I went, I don't know what Dan Duran likes. Let's do chicken thighs. So,
Everybody
there
likes
you go.
chicken.
Oh, yeah. So, Dan
Okay.
Duran, we will see you. Larry, we now will take a break. Dan, very nice.
All right. Good luck, Larry.
Thank you, Dan.
Good luck, Dan, with all your edibles. Watch out for them.
All righty.
It's Humble and Fred Radio. We're live around Southern Ontario on Canada's Comedy Superstation. We just try and make everything sound bigger than it
Sounds great.
Yeah. Canada's Comedy Superstation. Funny 820. And, of course, around the world, Canada's most uploaded podcast in history at humbleandfredradio.com. everybody. Larry Fedoruk is a fine broadcaster and friend of this show and mine, and sitting in for Fred, guest Fredding today. Only 2 more sleeps until we reveal the picture of Fred wearing a surgical mask on an air flight, I believe they're called, on an airplane.
A plane thing.
Would that be a first for Fred as well, probably?
Wearing a surgical mask in flight?
On a plane? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was. Anyway, that's just 2 more sleeps. Larry and I are going to talk about, of course, the Super Bowl. I didn't really have a lot of reference for favorite commercials, although the Bill Murray one for Hyundai was one I thought was interesting from more of a cultural reference standpoint. Phil, first let's talk a little bit about these fine folks.
That's right, the retirement Sherpa, the lovely Tim Niblett. You know, it's RSP season, and of course we got to think about how much we're going to be saving and paying down debt and investment returns, tax efficiencies, risk and reward, things that we should be thinking this time of year, especially considering we're going to be paying our taxes soon. And the retirement Sherpa is here for financial planning, retirement planning, and certainly with help in regards to your financial life. Check out Tim Niblett, the retirement Sherpa. He is a portfolio manager, and Raymond James is a member of the Canadian Investors Protection Fund. RetirementSherpa.ca.
Well done, well said. Turnkey Vacation Rentals, not your typical Airbnb when you stay at this exceptional home in La Quinta, California. You will, it's a reliable, high-end experience. 4-time winners of Travel Weekly's Magellan Award for vacation rental hospitality. Turnkey makes sure the home is clean and guest ready when you arrive, and they're available 24/7 to answer any questions. More than 1 million guests have stayed in their homes, and they'd love to host you too. Now use promo code OWNER15. And listeners of this program, a 15% discount on the property featured. Go to humbleandfredradio.com to find out more. Click on the link. That will take you to this fabulous home, Turnkey Vacation Rentals. Larry Fedoruk's podcast, which is released every Thursday on the Larry Fedoruk Radio Network, is called I Was 8.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that.
What's that about, Larry?
It's about a magnificent year. Now, I say in the intro that timelines bend a little because they do. So it's a general area, but a lot of times when I would tell a story about something goofy you did as a kid, and people go, "You're an idiot." And I go, "Yeah, well, I was 8." Like, whatever. I was,
right.
And maybe it was 9 or 6, but it was always 8. I was going, "Well, I was 8, so I was 8. What did I know?" You know, and then so it just became this catch-all phrase for every stupid thing you did in a number of kid years. And I sort of bend the timelines to make them all in 1 year when I was 8 years old, and all these stupid things happened.
So every Thursday you release a story.
Yeah.
How long is the podcast?
It's about 15 minutes generally.
Nice.
Give or take. Yeah. Bite size, somebody said. So.
And you just, each episode is one story about when you were 8.
Yeah. And maybe some commentary along with the story and how it changed me as a person, maybe. And I've written all the stories. I've written a number of stories. It started out as a writing project, and I was going to just write every Sunday. And then one Sunday in 2019, as I was writing these, I was reading it. The idea was to write the story and just put it away. And then a year later, after I had a year's worth of stories, I would edit them and, flesh them out a bit. And the idea was just to spell check it. So I'm reading it out loud, spell checking it. And I'm like, this sounds like a podcast to me. This sounds like it could be a story, maybe a little bit of production, not too much. And I was walking to the house, footsteps. Like, you don't need.
That's right.
Then I opened the door.
It's an old-time radio play. And then Mrs. Miller came in and said, "Larry, would you like..." You put on the voices. Would you like
I'm not going to do the voice. So I just I'm going to do it like that. And it sounded like a podcast to me. So then I was going to do that podcast sometime in 2020. And then my career took a turn. Thank you, Bell. And I had all sorts of time, and I'm like, I'm starting this thing in January, and it first popped mid-January.
And where, just to be make sure everyone knows, you can download it on iTunes, all the places.
Google, Apple,
Google,
all the places. Spotify, yes, it's all there.
I like that. I was just another thing that's been bugging me lately is when people say, Oh yeah, I was researching that. I was telling these guys.
Researching,
I said, "What do you mean?" Well, you were Googling it. Okay, you don't research. You didn't go somewhere.
No.
You know, you weren't sitting there with a legal pad taking down notes. You Googled it. Right. Anyway, go get it. Go get. I was 8. Can you give us a quick just like you've done 52 of these?
Yeah. So, and a real quick background. My mom's 91, still with us. Moved from Saskatchewan to Ontario like 2 years ago about. So when she was here, it was more visiting and it was more stories. Hey, remember when I got that tent and I ruined it? So I started, how many of these stories do I have? And that's when I started to make a list and write them. So it's these things like I got it, the space from wanting a tent to actually having a tent pitched in the side yard to the point where it was in the landfill was 3 weeks. That's how long my tent lasted. I ruined it. I was just a kid. I ruined it.
But that is a hallmark of being 8. You ruin everything you're given.
And after you begged, and the way I got the tent was my parents said, if you save half the money, we'll give you the other half. That was the deal. Thinking I'll forget about it eventually because I'll never save that money.
Sure.
And a day later, my grandma takes me to bingo and gets an extra card and says, if I watch it, I will get half of whatever the card wins. Bingo. Exactly half of the tent money. So a day later, I'm like, okay, I came up with my half.
That's right.
So where's my tent? I got the tent and ruined it. My dad out in the prairies. Howard, we share a little bit of prairie history.
Yeah, where are you from originally?
Saskatoon, Prince Albert area.
Yeah, I know.
In between there. And
Waskesiu.
Well, Waskesiu was that's where you went to the cottage.
That was the cottage country up there, yeah.
So my dad and his brothers used to make hooch up there occasionally.
They were gin runners.
And gin! This was some kind of homebrew whiskey, White Lightning crap.
Okay.
That was like. So one of my times with Dad is when he'd go make the booze out on the farm. I had to stand at the front and watch for cops.
As a lot of
So
as 8-year-olds do.
And that was the thing. Is like today, dads are like, and your dad, I'm a dad, was like, what do you want to do today? That was you would ask your kids. Right. That wasn't the way it happened.
No, exactly.
It's like, here's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Keep up, shut up, and watch for cops.
That's the thing. No one ever. Our parents never asked us anything.
Yeah. So
mostly our opinion. They didn't want to know what we thought about anything.
There's a number of these stories like that, and I kind of flesh them out into like a little 10-minute, 15-minute saga.
Isn't that interesting?
And so far I'm happy.
I was going to say it's interesting too because it's the opposite of parenting now. Our kids don't want to know what we're thinking; they just tell us what they're thinking.
They're the ones brewing the hooch.
No, not only does it sound like a great idea for a podcast, a couple things strike me. I love the fact that it's 15 minutes because for some reason, again, this world of podcasting is so wide open that why not 15 minutes? Whenever people come in here and talk to us about, they want to do a podcast. For some reason, they want to do it for hours.
Yeah.
And we always say the same thing. No one knows how long it's supposed to be. If you want it to be a beginning, a middle, and an end in 15 minutes, well, great. I'll get it. You know? It doesn't have to be 22 minutes or a half. Just because it's traditional that TV shows are this long or episodes. A lot of episodic stuff on YouTube and things like that aren't a specific time.
That's what years in radio. It's what I love about doing the podcast now is this one is 17 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
And the next one is 15 and a half, and that's just it. So
I like that idea. I also like the fact that it's thematic. I also like the fact that at the end of a year of doing it, you have a body of work that could obviously be a book. I mean, I'm sure you're thinking about that.
That's how it started. It started as here's going to be a little book of stories, of essays, of a little Canadiana maybe, because so often when in the years I've written and you've been published and I've been published is you try and cheat sort of the Canadian. You spell theater, ER, and all these things so that maybe there's a market outside of Canada. And I was like, screw it. This happened in Canada on the prairies, and I'm just going to be a Canadian for these stories.
I love it. Larry Fedoruk, watching his dad make, hooch in the bush. It's kind of like the Saskatoon Road to Perdition. How you like that for a reference?
That's not bad.
Little Saskatoon Road to Saskatoon. Little Dennis Miller for you. I mentioned that there's a story that German scientists have found Phil told me about this, that, the flu, by the way, I'm segueing now to
Yes,
something else.
I get it. Yes.
That happened quick, I know.
That's okay. Best that way.
German scientists have discovered that there is a connection between fecal matter and the coronavirus.
Yes.
So Phil?
People were talking about, spreading this virus through, touching folks or being close to folks and then touching their eyes and mouth. But the thing is, they found out that somehow the virus survives the digestive system. And so there are cases now of folks who were infected as a result of being in the same washroom as infected patients.
So when Phil told me this story, I'm like, yeah, that's what the Germans love chatting about poo. German. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. German Scheiße porn.
Oh, gee.
Come on.
What is
We're
that?
all grown up. What? You don't know about that?
Well, I know that I just read an article about 17 German words that have no English translation, because Germans have these wonderful words for things.
Yes, they do.
Like Schadenfreude and
Yes.
all these. So I don't know this word, though.
What, Scheiße?
No, yeah, what did you say?
That's Scheiße is duty.
Ah,
That's poo-poo.
sorry. Sorry, I didn't know that.
You forgot that I was 8. So, see, I just think it's great. Again, at one time, the Germans were known for certain things, and now, basically, they're just a bunch of people that love poo porn. And as you know, as you people who listen to the show know, I'm not big on the Germans anymore. Okay.
Anymore.
Okay. I've turned away. Anyway, and it's funny about people not wanting to go to Chinatown or it. So where are we at, Phil? Phil had some problems with a flight.
Oh, yes.
Give me the abridged version of that story.
Long story short, Air Canada saved me in some ways because over the weekend, I was originally...
Phil's going to Cambodia
Right.
Thursday.
So I was originally...
Because that's where his wife lives.
Yeah, because I'm Cambodia.
That's a true story.
Yeah. And we're both
Fantastic.
ethnically Chinese, so we're going through this coronavirus thing too. But
Sure.
So I booked tickets to Cambodia in September. I didn't know that a health thing is going to come up.
Pre-virus.
And so my airline started shifting the flights away. The Chinese airline that I was going to fly on, I had to connect through Shanghai, and so. I was pretty loyal about it over the past week. I'm like, well, if you're going to change it because of the lack of demand, please go ahead. But they did it 3 times. And so suddenly, I'm not leaving Thursday. It was suddenly Friday, and not Friday. It's Sunday. And it's like, holy moly, what's going on here? And so I basically said, that's enough, and can I get a refund? And so I did.
And all this was because you didn't... It was a change in the Chinese airline?
Yes, so
Yeah.
China Eastern was the airline I was originally booked with, but the problem is because of the collapse in demand for any flights through these airlines.
Oh, I
it
see.
means that
they
had
started
to shift.
canceling. Yeah, they started canceling
Yes.
flights. I
Yes,
guess.
yes.
But Phil, the interesting part I thought was that if you come back through one of those SARS virus countries,
Yes.
you would have to be quarantined.
Now, that's the big trouble that I went through because over the same weekend we just went through, Donald Trump signed an executive order basically saying we're going to quarantine everyone coming home. And so the worry is because the U.S. is our neighbor, we're worried that Canada is going to do the same to us. And so if that potentially happens during a quarantine, the whole house is like
Yeah,
excluded.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That
But that's happening here. Anybody coming now is going to be
From Wuhan.
in
Yeah.
Trenton. Going to be at CFB Trenton for 2 weeks or whatever.
But those are folks directly on that.
Oh, I
side.
see.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if
yeah.
you come from Wuhan, you come here, we have to quarantine you.
That's
for
right. But in
14
the
days.
States, they've signed a blanket ban.
Oh,
Which
okay.
means no
Thank
one
you.
from foreign countries can visit the U.S. if they visited China. And in Canada, so for citizens and folks who have the right to come home, they'd be quarantined for 14 days.
Jeez.
And so,
Well, I know that's not good for anyone. Although if you have some good Wi-Fi, you can just kick back for a couple weeks, catch up on some Netflix shows.
yeah.
I guess. Did you see the time lapse film of the hospital building?
Yes.
I think it's right in Wuhan, isn't it?
That's right. The Wuhan Special Coronavirus Hospital.
No, I don't know.
They're building 2 hospitals, so they show the time lapse photography of this massive open area, and suddenly there's lights and a foundation, and suddenly some walls are up, and then there's windows, and then there's a roof, and there's thing, and you're looking at this time lapse thing of the workers hustling, and you go, wow, like 6 months a year, 2 days. They have like 2,000 workers 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they're going to build 2 hospitals in 2 weeks.
It's like they're setting up school portables to the extreme, right? Like,
oh, it's exactly great reference.
Yeah.
And it's like, and this time lapse is like they did this in 2 days. They built, a quarter of a hospital.
Okay, so it's Wuhan hospital construction.
Yes, and it's incredible.
Wait while I research this.
Oh boy.
Built in just 10 days.
Yes.
Coronavirus hospital in China accepts first patients.
It's so that was like, so my story's old. It's been built.
Wow.
It's like incredible stuff.
Okay, well, I can't find it on this page, but that's incredible.
Mm-hmm. So in fear of having Canada putting in this familiar quarantine thing, like my parents would have lost $29,000 because they wouldn't be able to go to work. You don't go to the factory, you get nothing.
Yeah.
So I rebooked through Air Canada, and by coincidence, because of the lack of travel demand, it's almost the same price.
Okay, now I found it. So oh my gosh, because I had to Google. My research was Wuhan hospital time lapse.
Ooh.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm going to spend the next 60 seconds watching it. This is great. I mean, this just will show you. Wow.
Yeah, I my point was just different ways that different organizations and people react to the virus and to everything else.
That's right. That's right.
That's speaking of reaction. That's Stan welcoming his friend Bill Brio. Well, I know I keep leaning on this statistic, only because it's for perspective purposes. That 80,000 people in North America, Phil?
Yes.
Or 80,000 people in the world.
So
or,
60,000 in the States and a few thousand in Canada.
So, but
yeah.
60 to 80,000 people in North America every year die of the regular flu.
Yes.
They just die. And it's terrible, but, it's part of the... That's how it works.
The cull?
I was going to say...
You didn't want to say that word? But I know what you're saying.
It's a human...
You're right.
But
You're
it's just part of the experience of living in a society next to other human beings, But for some reason, this happens. But I guess part of the panic comes from the fact that it can spread all over the world versus, a localized event. Mm-hmm. I think. What do you think?
Is there such a thing anymore as a localized event? Isn't an epidemic, you're a plane ride away from a pandemic? I mean, it's just it. And from what I understand, it's not necessarily the killer flu that everybody thinks it is, but people die. As you said, people die from the regular flu every year,
all the
and a
time.
number of them. And there are more vulnerable people. And the people who've died so far, we don't know their vulnerability necessarily. We don't know them case by case.
I was hearing approximately a third to two-thirds of cases are elderly folks with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, and that happens with regular flu, and it's sad, and I'm glad people are looking, are showing concern and trying to take precautions, doing all this. I understand. I just don't understand the misinformation and the panic and the whole, that's the thing that fascinates me most. Is here's a picture of 7 earth movers, and this is a mass grave from the coronavirus. I'm like, no, it's not. It's some earth movers.
Yeah. Well, that's why I ask you that question. I wonder what it is, in the human nature, the experience that starts us. Like I was saying to Phil last week, like I was in Chinatown a week ago having dinner, and it was pretty quiet, for a Tuesday night at 7. It was. And you were saying that people are avoiding going to Chinatown.
They're not going to Chinese businesses. They're not going to Markham for some reason. It's just ridiculous.
There are Chinese people in Markham?
With SARS,
yes.
as they did with SARS.
Yeah.
Same thing happened.
It's embarrassing.
So, as I said, hey, Bill, you're going to love this. In 2 days' time, I'm releasing a picture of Fred wearing a mask on an airplane. It will change. It'll change how you think of everything.
I was listening and heard about that this morning.
Oh, really? It's the best thing ever. I had an event last week I thought, was going to change me. I don't know if I have time to say this. Well, I've said it now. So I go to yoga. I do that a lot. It's a great way of, for me to stay in shape, stretch out your back, blah, blah, blah. I go there and I'm not, I kind of a little self-conscious, because everyone is very bendy, So I'm already self-conscious as a rule. And last week I went to a yoga class and I didn't know, You just sign up and you go, and everything's going sort of normally. I'm sweating. That's the other thing about this hot yoga. I always have the same thought. I go into every class. I go, oh, it's not so bad. Then like 10 minutes later, my shins are bleeding from sweat. It's just like, honestly, it's like nothing you've ever seen. I look down. I'm like, I didn't even know you had sweat glands. Like, honestly, like the shin, like your shin skin is sweating. So class is going along. At about the halfway mark, the instructor, who's very enthusiastic. I should also say, some of these classes have music as a component. Usually it's very Zamfir, meditation style, very,
Nice. Yeah.
And this guy's doing his playlist, and we're doing our moves to this yoga thing. And all of a sudden, the music switches, and it's James Brown. Get up off of that thing. Dance. You'll feel better. Get up off of that thing. And all of a sudden, he's like, oh, come on, everybody. Like, everybody, let's start dancing. I'm like, what? It's like, it's noon. It's noon. And there's 30 people in the class, and I would say, like, 25 are the humans. There's 5 guys, couple in my age bracket. And the dancing starts, and we just don't know what to do. It's the most self-conscious. And I thought, so I just start doing a little bit of this. Like, I don't know what to do. I mean, I really want to just get up and walk out is where I'm at.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, he wants us to just, like, free yourself. Don't get out of your head, right? Open up your horizons. And by the way, I specifically didn't tell this story when Fred was here because I would have never heard the end of it. But now I have the mask. I have the mask to balance it.
I see where this is
That's
going.
a weight.
Okay, great.
And then, but the problem is, I thought it was just going to be like a few seconds of, hey, let's just get out of our heads. So I'm sort of dancing along, and I'm trying to think of something to do. And of course, the women are all free, and one woman starts dancing around the whole studio. Like, what? I'm like, what is happening?
Thank you.
That person,
Yes. Hey, what are you doing later?
Everything's made of hemp. Anyway. But the thing is, he does it for the whole song. Now, the song's about 2.5 minutes long, and at one point, I stop and I take some water and wipe him. Anyway, when it was over, I'm like, well, that's it. Now I've done that. Now I'm a guy that's done that at noon at a yoga studio. Mm-hmm. I've danced, Phil. I'm forever changed.
Just as an observation, you have a picture of Fred.
Yeah.
There's no video of you.
No,
at yoga.
there isn't.
So I think
No.
I think you were going to share that story, but you didn't have the mask. I think the mask, you having the mask picture, still tops him having a yoga story. You know
Say
what I'm
that
saying?
again.
I think you have a bigger hand. I think you have a full house. He's got like a pair.
What? Right.
He's got a yoga story about you.
Exactly.
What's the evidence? Where's the film? Where's the Facebook video?
He just
You've
has
got a
my
picture.
word
You've got
that
a
I've
picture.
danced at yoga.
Yeah.
I have. You're
I
right.
wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry.
In 2 days' time, I'll release a picture. All right. Yeah, man. This was me. Okay. Oh, I should also tell you, in hot yoga, the men oftentimes go without shirts. Okay? It's shirts.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So, think about me. I'm not wearing any shirt. I'm sweating from my eyeballs. And this guy, everyone starts dancing around it. I just don't know what to do. Honestly. I thought, maybe I could hide under my yoga mat until this is over.
I haven't been shirtless since 2007. Not even in a
Since
shower.
I was 8. All right, listen, we got to take a break. Bill Brio's going to talk TV, and so are we when we come back. It's Humble and Fred Radio.
Get up off of that thing and shake the roof, you better. Get up off of that thing and try to release that pressure. Get up off. Good God. So good. Everybody ready?
It's Humble and Fred Radio. And Fred's in Mexico now. As I mentioned, Fred will be on the show, I think, on Wednesday. And I'll wait till Wednesday to release the picture of Fred wearing a surgical mask on an airplane. Of course, Talise Patterson, Germaware. I get that, but I guess she made Fred wear the mask too. This is where we're at. Larry Fedoric, everybody. Larry Fedoric, Sean. Larry Fedoric's here.
Thank you again for having me. Having a blast.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
Larry Fedoric. I was just looking at Larry's Facebook page, also called Larry Fedoric.
It's a brand.
It's a brand.
It's a brand.
And Larry graciously, nicely sent his Facebook followers a picture saying, thrilled to be guesting on the Humble and Fred show. And then somebody said, oh, congratulations on your new gig. And you had to sort of say, no, I'm just sitting in for the day, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody said, well, perhaps a PD somewhere will be listening. And then Larry and I had
in program director of radio, yeah.
Because that's how. And I just laugh because I'm like, what? You mean a brand manager of 17 stations would happen to be listening to this one? But Larry is hosting his own podcast now. It's released every Thursday. It's called I Was 8. You can download it wherever you get your podcasts. And speaking of which, another friend of the program, he's been making some regular appearances now the past little while, has his own podcast called...
Brio TV, the podcast.
There he is. Bill Brio. Look
We
at
thought
that,
long
Bill
and
Brio.
hard on that one, yeah.
This is so weird. Bill Brio, the podcast.
Yeah.
Bill, this is weird because Larry told me before you came in that you'd been on his radio show.
Many times. And it's great to meet Larry, meet you in person.
We'd never met. And
No.
you were like one of my favorite guests always, and always, so generous with your time.
Well,
and
I was
it's
always
great to meet you.
always very happy to be on it. Larry and Howard, the difference is you listen. I've been fortunate to be asked to be a guest to talk about TV on different shows, but it's always fun when it's with someone who will listen and challenge, and it's like talking to a smart friend,
wow.
And so it was always my pleasure to be a guest.
Thank
for sure.
you.
Yeah.
Bill's here. What is this? Is the schedule? The first Monday every new moon. What is
Yes,
it?
that's exactly it. Yeah, the first new moon.
First moon of the new month.
Yeah, it's once a month, I think.
Every Groundhog Boxing Day.
yeah.
Of course, that's right. This is Groundhog Boxing Day. The big television story yesterday, of course, the Super Bowl.
Was that yesterday?
I believe so. We can talk a halftime show in a second. Do you have any early numbers?
Oh, no. But, the guess is going in, we're 100 million viewers in the States.
Mm-hmm.
What'll be different this year is that, the whole number will be back in Canada. It used to be Bell had to give up about 40% of its audience because the CRTC mandated that there be a direct feed from the U.S. the last 3 years, so you could watch the Super Bowl commercials.
The channels, the famous channel substitution.
Right. So instead of it being 5.5 million, it'll be up more like 9 million in Canada today when the numbers come out, probably.
Well, because are you saying because they wasn't the story that they didn't allow the direct feed this year?
That's right. So instead of so nothing cannibalized CTV's feed.
I see.
Of it.
Yeah.
And that was what was happening the last 3 years. So they're a lot happier at Bell. I'm sure that they got the full money for their investment on that.
I remember we used to get upset because we weren't able to see the exciting American television commercials. But now it doesn't matter. I've already seen a bunch of them. Right. You can just go online and see them.
It was the stupidest CRTC decision, and they've made many stupid decisions, but it was the stupidest one ever. In recent times, they finally did this. Like, you could have done this in the 80s, we might have been thankful, but you do this now when the commercials are all out there already. You can not only see a 30-second version of this, you can see the 3-minute version on YouTube for 7 days prior.
Yeah.
And they somehow, in their wisdom, cut off funds from Canadian business. I don't know.
Well, but I think it's interesting because I think the opposite. I think whether they do or don't have channel substitution now doesn't matter as much. Because if you want to see the Bill Murray Groundhog Day commercial, which I love,
right,
you can just go see it.
Yeah, and that's been the case for many years. And you could have watched 40 before the game of the commercials that were shown, the 60 commercials online, and a lot of people do. But that decision did, it was literally, Bell had made an investment. They bought NFL rights for 5 years based on having the number one draw in all of television. And then a decision out of nowhere, well, you have to now share that audience with the American broadcaster. So it was punitive, really.
Yeah.
They
But-
made
and
that
you can see
investment.
why-
I don't understand.
But you can see why Bell, and it's easy to crap on them all the time, but you can see why they would want it reversed, because they bought the rights and they're only getting 60% of the revenue that they paid for 100% of the rights.
Right, and as you were saying, Larry, it almost would be like a ruling came down saying you can't read American newspapers, or it's before the internet. Like, it doesn't make any sense now. You can watch things and do things. Yeah. It's a global world, and broadcasting especially. So mandating that way was ludicrous.
Okay, so here's some the 50-year difference. Now, I'd seen this. I think they show this on the game, but Dan Duran, our weather specialist, just sent this to me. It was the 50-year difference. So Super Bowl IV, the average ticket price was $15. That's in, what was 50 years ago? In
71.
71 money? Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bill. So I was like, I don't know. Take me a while. I did 70. The average ticket price yesterday, $2,500. The cost of a commercial, I was actually surprised. Not by the high number. The cost of a commercial yesterday was $5.6 million. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. The cost of a commercial in 1971, though, was $78,000.
Wow.
That's a lot of dough in 71.
Yeah.
And that number seemed pretty big to me.
Well, it probably, I think the first year would have been more like 25,000. It took a leap. After Joe Namath won in 70, that was the Super Bowl, suddenly became the Super Bowl. And probably that very next year it went up a lot.
Halftime show in 71. This is a name that there's 4 of us in this room right now, including Baby Sean from Georgetown, and only 3 of us will know this person's name.
Can I
Carol?
guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say Al Hurt.
I was going to say Up With People.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome. Carol Channing,
Oh, wow.
Because, in 71, we were all like, I wonder what Carol Channing's going to do during the halftime.
Didn't she just pass
I think
last
she did.
year?
You're
Or something?
right.
She lived to be like 100.
Exactly.
She saw the changes in the Super Bowl.
Before we get to the halftime show yesterday, I thought this was a nice touch. That in 1971, the play-by-play announcer was Jack Buck.
Right. And
his son, Joe Buck.
Right.
Yeah.
Who I think does a nice job.
Yeah, he's good.
I like Joe Buck in football. I like him in baseball.
Baseball, he's really good.
Very, very good.
And his dad was great in baseball.
Very,
too.
very good. I don't like him in golf. I don't want to get into it right now, but he Fox got the rights to the U.S. Open a couple years ago, and it's just clunky. It's not his sport, and I've read lots of articles about him trying to assimilate. But I think the problem is I like him so good in those other sports.
Yeah.
Is that even a phrase? I like him so good.
Troy Aikman did the play-by-play on the Super Bowl.
Decent.
And decent, but usually better than he was yesterday. He had kind of an off game. He would say, the 49ers, they're going to run that ball right down their throat. Watch this play, and then they would pass.
Yeah.
Like it went on and on like that all day.
I will say this. Yeah, Aikman was a bit behind. It was like he was behind Sean.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, Sean, just keep on the lookout. We're expecting some other guests. I thought his best call, though, and I do agree with you. He seemed a little bit delayed. His best call, though, was in the fourth quarter, 10 minutes to go. It's 30-20 for the 49ers, and Aikman says something like, who's the kid, the quarterback kid?
From Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas.
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's why I love that.
His name
Hey,
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
He is
Mahomes.
He said it's time. He said Mahomes has had a bad game, which he had. He hadn't had a very good game right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Well, didn't seem sharp. And Aikman says something like, it's time for him to step up and make a big play. And literally that was the play, the 40-yard, broke it wide open. And I thought that was pretty prescient. And that's a quarterback calling that.
Yep.
So it's almost like Mahomes' game turned around with 10 minutes to go, and so did Aikman. He had a better...
You're right. Exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, because he started slow.
And the game was like typical Super Bowl. I was watching it, I was reading the book while I was watching it. I'm like, okay, it's kind of developing. And then it got really exciting. It was almost like, and I think Fred would agree, it was almost like a CFL game broke out at the end. Because, like, it did. It was like, because that's the CFL way. It's like 17 points in the last 10 minutes. Like, what's happening here? Because it got really exciting.
Well, yeah, it was 10-10 at half, and it just seemed like, there's no more boring number than 10-10.
Yes.
Then suddenly it was switching sides and back and forth. It got really cool.
Yeah, it really got good. And like I said, I thought Aikman's game stepped up. All right, well, let's start with the big draw for a lot of people is the halftime show. Now, when I first heard who was going to be doing it, I really wasn't sure who it was for.
Right.
As a guy that covers television, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think they should just replay the Prince halftime show every single year. That was, to me, the height of it. It was just brilliant. The guy is playing in the driving rain, and a very exciting halftime show. Yeah, I thought it was confusing. You know, they tried to introduce sort of female empowerment symbolism into the whole concept. They had school children running around. They had the female image, and it was 12 minutes of ass shaking and pole dancing.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem to.
I believe that was the name of the theme this year.
Right. So to me, it was like, what was the message? It seemed to be a mixed message to me, anyway. You know.
Yeah, Larry Fedora.
I thought it was, and again, not directed at me, not my demographic, not for males, I guess, but I just hated it. I just thought it was awful. I thought, when did the halftime show become, let's jam as many effects as we can into this 12 to 15 minutes? It was too much. It was an onslaught. The people work on Broadway shows for months and that don't have this much production, and it wasn't even, it was just so much of an assault rather, that it wasn't even I couldn't be impressed by the fireworks or the smoke or the dancing or the aerial shots or and Jennifer Lopez 50. All right, that's impressive.
Yeah.
You know, Shakira 43, remarkable.
I agree with you. I thought it was terrible. And here's why I thought it was terrible. First of all, I wasn't sure what was the point of it. But secondly, we're all now sophisticated enough. There isn't anyone watching that, I would assume, that doesn't know it's all lip synced. So basically, what you're watching is 12 minutes of people just dancing around to their own songs.
Right.
They're not performing it. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive, but where it really bogged down for me, and I don't know, I apologize, because it was a bit, again, I was reading, and this was going on, and there was one point where there was guys dancing around with trumpets and trombones.
Yes.
And I'm like, no one is buying the fact that they're not playing a trombone and doing this.
Yeah.
Like, it just the whole, that's when it started. I'm like, oh, come on.
It should have sounded like people wheezing the whole time. Yeah. And
You should. I don't play a woodwind instrument, but I have tried it. It's hard. You can't.
Oh yeah.
Trumpet's impossible.
Trumpet's impossible.
And also, these were songs from the '90s too. Both of the talent, like it wasn't like new hits or anything. To me, I would rather watch the 10 minutes before the halftime show, the trucks setting up this unbelievable achievement, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers.
Amazing.
Just show that and play some music.
You know, that's interesting you say that, because as they were going to commercial, hang on, here she is. By the way, just to take us away for a second, let's just put a pin in that. No doubt about it. Like somebody said just during the break, watching it, like it was great. You could watch it on mute.
Right.
Because just watching these two women dance around, I'm like, that's cool. You know, I'll play some music I like while you guys dance.
Yeah.
But as they were going to commercial, they said, okay, coming up the Pepsi halftime show. And then they showed a shot of a bunch of guys with headphones setting up. I thought, that's cool.
Show that.
Because it made me think, there's got to be, like in the actual stadium, you know, there's a bunch of stuff going on right now.
Oh yeah.
That might be. That would be interesting to see, because you just get the sense like, wow, they've only got a couple of minutes to set this platform up.
Have they ever done that? The backstage YouTube video?
That would be cool.
I think there is a video online you can watch of them setting up, because it's an engineering marvel, really.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, when they got to whatever song it was, two things: the trumpet and trombone guys were making me laugh. I'm like, come on. But the other thing was, so Shakira came on. And I think she did Her Hips Don't Lie. And then something happened, and I was sort of turned away, and all of a sudden, That was Jennifer Lopez.
Right.
Because at first I thought Shakira had changed costumes.
Right.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Like there was no, ladies
Yeah.
and gentlemen, and now, or
Yeah.
was
Right.
there, and did I miss it?
No, you're right.
She just appeared around
Just
a
appeared.
pole.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I thought that was weird. It's like, what? Is that so? And then I also had this thought, like, I guess Shakira is the opening act for the Jennifer Lopez. And I didn't realize I don't really know a whole bunch of their music, but then when Jennifer Lopez did the Dancing on the Floor song, I think that's what it's called. I'm like,
they should have had them lip sync each other's songs because
Yeah,
it doesn't
that'd
matter,
be
right?
Yeah. But whenever that came on, I had to, I'm like, well, and now she's dancing on the floor, and I was about to, be sort of hate on it, but I'm like, well, wait a second, I have danced on the floor recently at yoga, so I guess I'm a guy that dances on the floor.
And who were those guests? They had was that Pitbull or was that Eminem?
I don't know.
Who was there? Was a couple
I
of
don't
guys
know.
stuck in there, and
Yeah, this isn't the best pen. Hey, old white guys talking about the current raps.
yeah.
I don't know.
You're hipping and you're hopping.
It was but it was all in all, I think overall I would be interested to see what the numbers are because it was a good game in the end.
Yeah.
And because usually with a Super Bowl, I have this policy, which is I'm going to watch the first half, check out the halftime show so we can talk about it, and then if it's boring, I won't bother.
Right.
But I had this feeling. I thought, okay, I'll give it a little bit more time, and again, kind of clunky. But I felt bad because Kansas City not having won it in 50 years. I thought, okay, San Francisco's got this, and then it turned around and it was in the end I think a pretty good product.
It was a great story for that coach. You wanted
Yeah.
to see him win. He never won. And,
Wilford Brimley.
Wilford Brimley.
Get
Yeah.
another reference. I only knew the three of us would know. They keep going to the sideline. The Kansas City coach. I'm like, is Wilford Brimley still able to coach?
But you're right. And the numbers in the States peaked about 10 years ago at around 110 or 15 million, and they've been slowly ebbing back. They were under 100 million a couple of years ago. So I bet you around 100 million. I think there was another 10 million just happy Boston team, New England Patriots weren't there.
weren't,
People might have returned because there was actually two different teams this time.
Yeah.
I was watching the pregame since I guess about Saturday at noon.
Yeah.
And
24 hours.
December.
One of the times they come, and now here's the pre-kick show, and they call it the pre-kick show. Right?
Oh, nice.
And that was another 10 minutes. I don't know if you watched any of that, Bill, but some of that was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They did a Johnny Cash, a Ragged Old Flag, a tribute to America.
Wow.
They did the NFL 100 years, top 100 players.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of these guys were out on the field.
Yeah.
I thought that recorded thing. Go ahead.
No, but they had, and I was watching this because Dwayne the Rock Johnson introduced the teams, and during some of the pre-game stuff, they had all this film, and Larry King was on. And I was like, when you were producing the Super Bowl shows, you just get anyone you want.
Yeah.
Who do we get? I don't know. It's, The Rock, Larry King. Sure.
Why not?
Of all, you just make a
Exactly.
call, and everybody goes, yeah, I'll be on
I'll
the
be there. It's a Super Bowl.
But like you said about the halftime show, every aspect of it's so overproduced and crammed with everything that it does make you dizzy. I saw at the beginning 4 gentlemen who fought in World War II.
Yeah,
They
I
were
love that,
100
actually.
years old, and the flags. But they showed a shot of the 1970 or 68 or 7 very first Super Bowl, and there was 2 football players and a referee flipping a coin. That was it on the field.
Yeah.
And then there was 50 flags and planes going over. Like it just showed you everything that had
I thought that was a
changed.
nice touch, though.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, and I also thought the little film that ran
was great.
just before the game
Yeah,
when that
yeah.
kid comes running
Yeah.
into the stadium
Yes.
with all those other kids. As much as I'm not a big fan of America these days, I mean, I'm a bigger fan than Germany, but just bear with me. I just thought that's what America does really well. What?
A bigger fan than Germany.
I am.
That's like
I still like America more than Germany.
Wow.
But just barely.
all right.
But that's what they do very well. That
Yeah.
thing with and
Very
all
much.
all the players.
Just to be devil's advocate on that,
Yes.
because on the
You like Germany better than the
no,
States?
no, I'm not going to go there. But with that film that they had with the kid, and he's in the neighborhood, and he eventually runs into the stable.
Yeah,
and
everyone's
they-
encouraging
And they've
him.
got all these NFLers who are chasing him through traffic.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the way the Oscars go now, because they start with film outside the arena,
Yeah.
and then they come in to the auditorium, the same guy that was in the film, and it just seemed like more of that same excess that we were talking about earlier. That it was a bit much, even though it was well made.
On a political note, I chuckled at the beginning because the other thing America does well is they get the money. And it was, I think, maybe even Buck who's like, and we'll be right back with the Turkish Airlines Super Bowl. And I'm like, here's a lovely airline. I'm sure they're terrific and they have lots of money. They can buy the Super Bowl. But I'm just saying that Turkey's a country right now that the United States is not necessarily, the administration is comfortable with.
Right.
It's certainly played into the whole Brexit thing, the country of Turkey, but it doesn't matter. They have money. The Turkish Airlines Super Bowl just sounded kind of strange politically speaking.
You know, and your point about it being overproduced, I kind of get that, but it was really the only thing I had seen. I didn't turn the game on till after golf finished, which was another great week for the PGA Tour because they had another playoff. And I made this point to Fred. One of the reasons I like to watch tournament golf, and I usually just watch on Sundays, is because every Sunday there's a championship. There's a bit of drama and for I don't know, last couple of weeks it's ended up in a playoff. So the playoff ended just before the Super Bowl started. So that was the only pregame I really saw. The other thing I watched a little bit of is the analysis in between and before the halftime show. And they have all those guys on the panel, right? And I mean, I'm sure you can name them. But the one guy that always he's so old now is Terry Bradshaw.
Right.
And they go to Bradshaw, and he's like, I'm not even sure if he holds up his pad and it's like pictures he was drawing.
Right.
I drew an airplane or whatever.
He forgot that thing is mic.
He forgot to pick the mic up.
Yeah.
What was that?
Why is he wearing a cap?
I know.
We all know you're
Right.
bald.
Right.
Yeah, he's wearing a cap.
Exactly.
He's wearing his cap.
Yeah.
They show the film clip of Mahomes, and then there's another clip of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
It's Jimmy, right? Jimmy
Yeah.
Garoppolo,
Yeah.
49ers quarterback.
Yeah.
And they cut back, and it's Bradshaw, and he goes, because Garoppolo worked under Tom Brady and at New England, and he said, people say Tom Brady's a good-looking guy. I think this is a better-looking guy. He's a good-looking kid. He's a fine Italian boy.
Right. Oh, I know. He's turned into Don Cherry in a way.
Oh, yeah. It was great. We go to Terry Bradshaw. He's drawing a picture of a football. That kid, he is a good-looking kid, though. He reminded me, every time I took a shot of him, I'm like, is George Clooney playing quarterback?
Right. Yeah.
He's Italian.
And the funny thing, and the Mahomes is also a good-looking kid.
Yeah.
And
they're young quarterbacks.
young
for change,
quarterbacks,
you know?
right?
Yeah.
And also interesting too about how certain people are imbued with high-level athletic ability. Because that story about Mahomes was a pitcher.
Yeah.
Could have gone, played
drafted by the Tigers. wasn't he?
yeah, drafted,
really?
but
Yeah.
drafted for professional baseball.
Yeah.
The kid that came second at the tournament, the golf tournament yesterday, a golfer named Tony Finau, was drafted to play basketball at university. I mean, they're high-level athletes.
Larry Walker, just in theAll of Fame baseball,
Yes.
he could have been a professional hockey player. He was. That's where his love was
Is that
originally.
right?
And then there's the rest of us, just kind of muddling along. Bill Brio, hang in for another little bit. Here we go. We didn't even get to like regular television. Here we go. We'll come back here in a second. Bill, and we'll tell you how to listen to Bill Brio's podcast, which is cool. Everyone's got some cool stuff going on. Also, it looks like Bernie Sanders is surging.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do we have the energy to get into Donald Trump stuff? I don't know. We'll see when we get back. It's Humble and Fred Radio.
Everybody knows I get off the train. Baby, it's the truth, the truth. I'm like Inception. I play with your brains, so don't sleep or snooze.
back. It's Humble and Fred Radio. Great to be with you in Hamilton and around Southern Ontario. That's what we do every Monday through Thursday. Larry Fedoric in for Fred tomorrow. Dan Duran Tuesday, Wednesdays. Dan Thursday. Scary Pete and his daughter Dylan. What's Dylan's last name, Phil?
Dylan Gray.
Dylan Gray. She's a recording artist. Just got signed. So that'll be exciting for Humble and Fred fans. Phil, first let's talk about this.
The Chambers plan. I've got a great update from my dentist. I got my Chambers plan statement in an email. It's one of those convenient things that are part of the Chambers plan insurance plan. Employee benefits enjoyed by 30,000 Canadian businesses. Anyone from 1 to 100 employees can apply for the Chambers plan. We've got benefits like health and dental. Mine's dental. I haven't seen a dentist in 16 years, so this is a great benefit to use.
Yeah, you guys are. Larry literally started to laugh. There was a 16-year gap.
There is.
In Phil's dental regimen.
And their action plan is affordable as a result of the Chambers plan.
What they did is they got the Chilean miners back together and they went in to Phil's hole. Wow.
They had to wear masks and everything.
And
one gets busy.
You know, what's his Jorge Della Chilean miner
Mendoza.
Whatever. He went in there. We never heard from him again.
But that's why it makes Canada's #1 employees benefits plan for small businesses, the Chambers plan, chamberplan.ca, for people like me and you.
All right, stickeru.com. Stickeru.com. Toronto Mike and I were there on Thursday night, making the scene, as you do. It was the launch of the Sticker Museum. Now, when we first started talking about this, I really couldn't have imagined it, but it really was something. It's a permanent sticker art exhibition at the flagship store on Queen West in Toronto. You got to go check it out. If you're anywhere else in the world and you want to order your stickers, go to stickeru.com. Stickers small that you can stick on a fridge, or stickers the size of a fridge you can stick on a wall. Stickeru.com. Find out more and order yours today. Very, very cool. Bill Brio is hanging out with us. Bill, always a welcome guest. The podcast is called
Brio TV, the podcast, and Rico Colantoni's up there now. Had a great chat, and Don Ferguson from the Air Force. We've lined up some other folks. Leonard Malton.
Wow.
Gonna get together with him. I saw him. He was down in LA on that press tour that the TV critics go to every year, just a few weeks ago. But other people in the industry too. Christina Jennings from Shaftesbury, and John Doyle from Globe and Mail and things like that. I don't know if John knows yet, but he's going to be a guest.
Oh, yeah.
But the idea is to talk about with people who love television, but also to have a conversation about Canadian TV. So much is changing. It's becoming such a global business. There's talk of a new broadcast act and putting up more walls. And how do you do that in a world that's the walls are coming down? So I think the Canadian shows written by Canadians are getting lost in the business of television that Canada is enjoying coast to coast. So anyway, things like that we'll be talking about on Brio TV, the podcast.
So what, because we're going to wrap up your segment, which was beautiful, but tell us about some shows that we should be looking for that we can watch until your next appearance the first Monday of March.
Yes, well, we're Picard. Star Trek
Yes.
Picard is the big buzz now.
Loved it.
And, if you were a fan of The Next Generation, my girlfriend Sandra watched every minute of that, loves Picard, so could hardly wait for this to come back on the air. And I'm not much of into the Star Trek saga. I remember the original when I was a kid. I watched Lost in Space instead. So it was more of a kid show. So I watched it, and it's almost the same thing we were talking about. I find that they cram so much information now into shows to prevent you from being distracted, perhaps, that they're hard to watch. And there was an awful lot of exposition, I felt, especially the second episode of Picard.
Well, I haven't seen the second one yet. I just saw the first one where they reintroduce him.
Yeah.
And by the way, just let everyone know, it's running on Sci-Fi.
Well, we're in Canada, you get to watch it on CTV Sci-Fi, which used to be called Space. It's
Okay,
a specialty
yes.
network. And so, it's free here. Otherwise, in the States, it's on CBS All Access, one of the digital streaming channels. It's beautifully made, and I think if you were a fan of the first, the exciting thing is seeing Data come back and a lot of putting the band back together
Yeah, exactly.
to go on a new mission. Picard is now 78, I
Yeah.
think, just like the actor, and he's compelled to go out and there's a daughter of Data who is a part of the mix, and he's to the rescue. I just wasn't as charmed by it as a lot of other critics.
My only, and Larry hasn't seen it yet, and I can tell you, I was a big Next Generation fan. I also like Lost in Space, but I'm much more of a sci-fi nerd than I tell you about, because I love Star Trek. I love Next Generation. I tell you where it started. Where I stopped is after that. Like, I didn't get into the Borg. I mean, I saw the Borg, but after Star Trek: The Next Generation, there was a whole Deep Space Nine. I got off the ship.
Right.
But the first episode, the only thing that struck me was he's 78. Now, he's a great 78.
Yeah.
Looks
Sure.
fantastic.
Yep.
But he's just 78.
Mm-hmm.
78-year-olds aren't going off saving any universe. No, I mean, seriously.
Well,
they're just not.
Bernie Sanders.
Well, that's true.
But it's the
That's a good
future.
point.
It's not the
But actually-
future.
You know what? I'm going to take
Are
it
they
all
in a
back.
78 is the new 28 generation?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's funny. I do that joke. Like, 'cause I talk about turning 60 in my act, but I said my brother's about to turn 70. I said that's not the new anything. Seriously, you're just done. Your race is done. But you're right. Picard is the same age as Bernie.
Yeah, when you think of it that way, and even a lot of entertainers, look at who's Norman Lear is producing television now. He's 97. You know, it is kind of extraordinary. I interviewed Patrick Stewart a few years ago. He had a show that was fantastic. I thought he was this cynical talk show host who was a real dick.
I loved it.
And it was fantastic.
What was
'cause
that called?
Oh boy, I can't remember the name of it now. But he had a butler who he was this weird relationship with,
Yeah.
and it let him just be
Crazy.
the opposite of what he always was.
Yeah.
And I think he was liberated, had so much fun doing that. Watching the first episode, he's sitting on a vineyard in France, and he's talking to Romulans or Vulcans or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And I just hope my
There,
words.
there was a scene in that first episode where he wakes up and opens up these beautiful shutters overlooking this pastoral view of a vineyard and the rolling hills, and it's a beautiful day, and the workers are there. And I literally said this out loud. Why would he ever want to leave this? I'm not going to space if this is my life.
True.
Forget space. And
Yeah.
then, but
And it's not a holodeck or anything. This is where he lives.
no, it's like for real.
Oh, wow.
It's
all
France.
Good
Yeah.
reference, yeah. Well, maybe France is a holodeck.
Maybe it was shot in St. Catharines, though. Or
Yeah, it could have been. But, you know, we were talking before the show started, Larry and I, about our ages and how, you know, the older you get, the younger formerly old people seem, you know. Like Larry's got a couple of kids in their late 30s. I've got kids now, mid-20s. And at the time, when you're in those age groups, you think people our age are like so old. But, you know, now in your 60s, it's like a 40-year-old is like, hey, nice kid. You know, and so.
like Shakira.
Exactly. Like Shakira's a kid, right? But
43, by the way, Shakira.
the point being that it's that old saying, if you didn't know how old you are, how old would you be? You know, how old are you if you don't know your age?
In terms of maturity or in terms of
Emotionally.
emotionally?
Emotionally, exactly. You know, it's like, I don't know what I thought people our age would be like when I was my kids' ages or your kids' ages. But I just thought you would have it figured out. But the trick of time is nobody has it figured out, and that it's the ever-present struggle to kind of make your way in the world.
When I was a kid, I would collect.
Thank you, Howard, for that philosophical.
No, it's very nice.
I would collect the Charlie Brown paperbacks. I would save up 35 cents and get the Fawcett Crest Charlie Brown book.
Wow,
that was out.
that's great.
And I would
Yeah.
look through it. And at the back, they had a little picture of Charles Schultz, the person who drew the drawings. And he wore a white shirt, skinny black tie, brush cut, glasses. And I thought, in the year 2000, I'll be 40, whatever that was. I will look just like this. This is what it looks like to be that age, right? So you're right. I'm always thinking I'm younger than I am because I don't seem to match that ideal that I thought of when I was a kid. You know?
Isn't there an old saying goes, when humanity, or an old story, humanity gets it all figured out, that the world will end and we'll have to start again?
Wow.
And then that's already happened.
Wow.
A couple of
Yeah.
times. And when you said, you know, you get to a point where you were all going to figure it out, if you do, it's like that just goes away and everybody else starts over. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. I mean, like I said, I know. I mean, you know, it goes without saying, I think, but we're different. I think we feel different than our parents did at this age.
Right.
I mean, I just know from, you know, I just, because I'm 38 years older than my youngest, who just turned 22 yesterday. But I know when I was 22 and my dad was this age, you know, we didn't have the same dialogue. I don't think my father was as current with the world as, say, people our age are, not as active, not as connected. So there is some advantages to being constantly connected to information and other people in a way that our parents didn't have access to.
Like, you're never your father's age is what it comes down to now.
Right.
And that the story with Neil Young, I think when he was in his 60s, he was saying how, when he was a kid, his parents would listen to, Tony Bennett, or no, not Tony Bennett, earlier than that, Perry Como this, Perry Como that, and then Neil Young realized, I'm Perry Como, I'm Perry Como. Now
I'm Perry Como.
so it does, yeah.
It's another trick of time.
Why is that so funny?
I know.
I'm Perry Como.
The weird thing about being any age, though, but especially as you get older, is that it's funny how everyone who is your own age you think looks older than you do.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, who's that guy?
Constantly.
Look at that guy.
Yeah.
Hey, and I'm 10 years older than him.
Until I look in the mirror, then the
I know.
sobering
Then it's
reality
frightening.
sinks in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Who's
pretty
the?
frightening.
I'm blanking on the coach of the Kansas City Chiefs. The big.
Ken Reed? Is it?
He finally.
61 years old.
Won. He said his interview yesterday in the Super Bowl was, as much as I try and be like my players, they still treat me like their father.
Right.
He said, so I guess I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And what a
Because I try
contrast
to
too,
be-
because he looked like a 61-year-old man.
Yeah.
The coach of San Francisco looked like his dad had to drive him to the stadium.
It's true. Eh?
Anyway, Bill Brio, ladies and gentlemen, will always be available at Brio
.tv.
And yes,
For Bill, real quick.
Yeah, there's no quick. We're
There's
here.
a bus shelter thing I was looking at, and it's Rob Lowe and Liv Tyler, and
Right.
it says 911 Lone Star.
Yes, exactly.
What is
right.
that all about?
And
That's
it
a spin-
looked like a parody of
It does.
a TV show.
And if
Like,
you watch it, it is a parody of
is
Steve.
it that? It looked
Well,
awful.
they
Just
do-
by a bus shelter.
Here's
ad.
the thing: you got to. You're okay. 911 surprise hit. It's about firemen and first
Sure,
responders.
okay, yeah.
And so they had it was a surprise hit 911. So they thought, well, we got to spin this off like CSI. We got to make another 5. So get us the 2 most beautiful people you can possibly think of and put them in fireman outfits, and that's Liv Tyler and Rob Lowe. And so you're right; they show up and go, well, burning building, and they put out fires for 60 minutes. Yeah.
I haven't
Wait,
seen.
it's not a parody. It's a real show.
It's a real
I
show.
haven't seen 10
CTV
seconds of it, but I looked at it and I went, "This looks like a joke."
Yeah.
Well,
And network television going, "Oh, why nobody's watching this?" And I'm like, "Come on."
When Les
This is your
Moonves
show?
used to run CBS for 20 years, every new show, CSI or NCIS, would be a middle-aged man surrounded by beautiful women, and it was literally Les Moonves. It was every show was
exactly.
the Les Moonves story,
Yeah.
and that's continued that blueprint. to
Especially
this
now
day.
that we know about Les Moonves.
Yeah.
I know what we'll do. Art imitates life. Yeah, it's funny that, and we've had a lot of conversations with Bill the last few months about, the state of network television versus all the streaming services. And I will say that little by little, I haven't watched them, but it seems from what I've seen from commercials that network television's gotten a lot better. They've upped their game.
No, you're right, Howard. They've had to, and they have. Yeah, there's some stuff on network TV that's pretty cool, well made. Because you're right. Otherwise, there'd be no one watching network television.
Amanda likes this show. Amanda Barker. Phil, what's the name of that show? It's got an unusual title. It's about an African American woman and a white guy.
The judge one?
No.
It's from the same guy as Big Bang and what's the same producer?
Oh, yes. iHeart.
iHeart Bombay
Oh my
Sapphire,
goodness.
whatever.
I should know this last name, but it's from Chuck Lorre.
Yeah.
and it's the comedian Billy, who used to be a few years ago on that other show. Yeah, it's terrible. I can't think of a single thing. Yeah,
It's another edition. It's another edition.
We'll be back with
of
more Alzheimer's
old guys
tonight.
that can't remember the name.
Exactly.
Of things.
Remember, he wore a shirt.
It's the show
Yeah.
with the iHeart.
Abishola.
I Heart.
Bob Hart's Abishola.
Bob Hart's?
And yeah, well, the symbol of a heart instead of like I Heart New York.
I know. I just love the fact this last 40 seconds has been the guy with the thing
Yeah.
from the heart.
Right.
Yeah, you're listening to professionals.
Yeah.
One of the guys in this panel actually covers television. I Bob Shart Habitually.
Yeah. Something like that.
What?
But it's surprisingly
Yeah,
it's
people
funny,
say it's great.
You know, and it's not. It's very unusual casting. The story is very African, her family and everything. But you do fall in love with these characters. So hats off to Chuck Lorre. He's found another one that he can make a huge hit.
How's this other show doing on the Michael Douglas and?
I love that. It's
The Kaminsky Method?
Yeah, the Kaminsky Method. Alan Arkin.
Arkin. We're
Yeah,
fans,
yeah,
right?
we're huge.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I wanted so much to like it because I love Alan Arkin.
Yeah, and he's
And
80. Like, talking about older guys on TV.
Yeah.
Still bringing it. Second season, not as good as the first, but I still like it
There's
a lot.
two shows that everyone seems to like for some reason I didn't connect with. One is that, the Kaminsky Method. And again, I watched almost all the first season. But that and also Frankie and Grace.
Grace and Frankie.
Grace and
yeah.
Frankie. My ex-wife loves it. I hear people rave about it.
It's in its final season, and it's okay. To me, it's more like a network sitcom in that it's not terribly risky or out there, I don't think. But it's just lovely to see Lily Tomlin do anything.
Yeah.
But I think it's ending just around the right amount of time. Those actresses, Jane Fonda's 80, 81, and Tomlin's, I think, 79. So.
Well, and again, it's like I think network television in general has aged because our kids, for the most part, have gone away. So if you think, well, what am I going to put on that will be watched by people our age? Well, those are the people we would watch.
Here's some statistics for you.
Give me statistics.
The median age of a show, take Friday nights as a show with Tom Selleck called Blue Bloods. It's a big hit on CTV here and in the States at CBS. What would you say the median age of that show is?
Of people watching it?
Yeah.
Well, because of the way you're asking, I'd say in the 50s.
70. That's the median age of that show. And
70?
Dancing with the Stars, 66.5.
Yeah. Well,
like, and this doesn't, even like a show like The Big Bang Theory is closer to 60 for the median age. And last fall, when all those new shows were launched, every year there's a fall new shows, millennials ignored them completely. There's no new audience coming up from behind. It's just boomers.
Well, that makes my point.
Is there money in
very
that?
much.
Is there money in that?
Well, there has to be.
60
When
and
you think
70?
of it, the median age is 10 years or 15 years past the upper echelon of 18 to 49, which is what you sell ads on. So you're right. People must be. You're seeing a lot more pharmaceutical ads on television on all kinds of shows.
I watch a lot of news channels.
Right.
It's back pads, second mortgage, stair machines.
I'll tell you what, it's funny. The one that I see a lot on golf is, and I feel bad for people that have to have it, is these CPAP wearers. It's the seriously.
Well, yeah, I know. But
I mean, like the CPAP, and then you got to get the stuff that cleans the CPAP.
Yeah.
The whole thing sounds messy.
Yeah. All the network should launch a show called Near Death.
Yeah.
And just fill it with commercials.
Just brought to you by CPAP machines.
and I'm just shaking my head at all the, and then I'm writing down the website.
That's right.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm going, hold on a second.
There's that, yeah.
Cleanyourcpap.ca.
I don't want pain when I cash. There's a commercial
Phil,
about that.
what are we going to talk about before we finish here? What do you got?
Gig
you got the
Sky,
Gig Sky. Let me
that's
get their
right.
music while we all just hang in here. I don't really see an end to any of it.
Gig Sky is for all ages, eh?
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
by the way, speaking of Gig Sky, I got where's this article? Ruger's coming in the next few weeks, I think after I get back. But there's a really nice review in one of the nerd sites talking about the first-hand experience of Gig Sky's eSIM app. Mm-hmm. And I was just telling you, we've been talking a lot about it for a while. But the review, it was just one of those things where they go through it, how easy it is to get it, download it, and connect it.
That's right. I've been to 3 continents, 8 countries with Gig Sky, and it's a seamless service for all because it's data at a great price, and you get the best network coverage and everything. So if you want to avoid the big bills with roaming and things like that, check out Gig Sky, especially in this winter when everyone's thinking about winter travel plans, March break, and so on. Don't forget to get your Gig Sky service before your travel so you can stay connected. And the eSIM is so simple. Download it. You don't have to buy it. It's not physical anymore. So if you have a Google Pixel 4 device or 3 or 3A or iPhones, certain types of iPhones, as well as devices that cover Windows operating systems. So in other words, a lot of new devices can now carry Gig Sky just by clicking download. Check out Gig Sky, gigsky.com, or visit our humbleandfredradio.com website. We still have deals on there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Do you have computer problems and don't know who you can trust to fix them fast? Well, CDN Technologies has the answer. If so, give them a call. Go to cdntechnologies.com. Barb Paluskowicz will be doing her podcast with Phil today called No
Tech Talk.
KNOW.
That's right.
The top 10 ways hackers get around your firewall and antivirus. You can check that out today. IT services, IT support, and so much more. Satisfaction is their guarantee. Imagine how you would feel to never have to manage IT again. Go check it out, cdntechnologies.com. Well, it was great. We talked a little bit about Super Bowl. We had some political things there. We talked about aging. Bill Brio is here still. I don't know how to get ready. I can't say goodbye to him. I can't say goodbye. We're going to do about 3 more minutes live with Larry Fedoruk. I'll remind everyone, if you're listening to him on the radio right now, his podcast is called I Was 8. Is released every Thursday. Go check it out where you find podcasts. This is 15 minutes. It's a great beginning, middle, and end, and a story. What is the next one you're going to discuss?
It is a personal journal category, storytelling. So that's what it is. So the next one is called, the one that's going to come up is called A Kid in a Candy Store. And our little town in the middle of the prairies had a candy store, which is kind of weird of all the businesses you'd set up in the middle of the prairies. But it was our candy store. And it was our center of the universe, and all us kids just orbited it constantly, how to land, where to get money, how to chase money. And then...
Take back bottles, find bottles, bring it back to the store. Yeah.
And it was penny candy, and we learned math and budgeting because we all knew what 50 cents was worth, how much candy. You could get a soft drink and a chocolate bar and then some penny candy, and so it's kind of about that. That's the next one.
What was the town you... Because I'm from southern Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Moose Jaw, and you're from...
So it's between Saskatoon and Prince Albert. It's still there. It's still got about the same amount of people in it. It's called Wakaw, Saskatchewan.
Wakaw.
Yes, it's a palindrome. W-A-K-A-W. Sounds like an American radio station, doesn't it? W-A-K-A-W.
In which direction? Northeast of Saskatoon?
So,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, about, I guess, northeast or northwest.
Well, one of those.
But north.
Yeah, okay.
Sort of northern, and then south of Prince Albert, PA.
Yeah.
And 1,000 people, still about 1,000 people, and famous for the lake nearby, which is Waka, is Cree for Crooked Lake. Boy, this is too much. So, and this is not part of the podcast.
I wish it was.
But it's, so we had a lake nearby, and I often describe my childhood as Stand By Me without the dead body. And there might have been a dead body, it's just we never found it.
You don't
we had
know.
to look for it. So that's kind of it. We went to the lake, and we had a lake nearby, and there was cottages at the lake, and people came from the cities. So we had an influx of city people in the summer, and it's just kind of those stories.
Well, I look forward to it.
Candy Store is the next one.
And that's I Was 8 on the Larry Fedoruk Podcast Network. Sean, baby Sean will hang in here for our podcast extra. I can't wait to do you have time for the podcast extra today, Sean?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Sean's going to do something. I can't. There's a few things we left on the table. Bill, you want to hang around for the podcast extra?
Sure.
You can swear and stuff.
Yeah.
That'll be
Nice.
good. We didn't get into any of the impeachment stuff. I just don't have the energy right now. Although I found it's by far, as I've said this on several occasions, my favorite season yet of Trump. Best season yet. Yep. Greatest season ever. Seriously, and you just every time you think, can this get any better?
Grayson Trumpy.
Exactly. You want to download that show. Okay, kids. Tomorrow morning, as I mentioned, Dan Duran will be guesting, and Larry, thank you so much for
Thank you.
taking some
Again,
time.
I lose a gig to Dan Durant.
Oh my God.
You know, that Deanie Petty thing, I auditioned for that.
All you
and
good-looking
he
guys.
got it.
Oh,
and he got
of course.
He
Well,
got the Deanie Petty gig. There's
when
the
you go up
reference. Hey,
against
Bill?
like
I remember.
you can't go up against Dan Duran when it comes to looks. All right, Phil.
This episode of Humble and Fred Radio is brought to you by FYI Music News, The Retirement Sherpa, Gig Sky, The Chambers Plan, Palma Pasta, CDN Technologies, and our newest sponsor, Sticker You, where you can get your stickers on Queen Street or order anywhere in the world. We broadcast to the planet from the worldwide headquarters of the Humble and Fred Show. More Humble and Fred tomorrow and online at humbleandfredradio.com.
We're not done yet. Only seems like we're done. And that's really the end of the broadcast. That's all it was. So we're now off. Funny 820. You okay?
I'm okay.
Are you sure?
Wonderful.
All right. Do you have
Play musical chairs.
Mr. Fedoruk and Mr. Brio are here? Do you want to? Are you going to tell us a story?
Ooh.
You don't have to.
What kind of story do you want to hear?
Well,
This is podcast part?
yeah, it's
Right, that's
podcast
what I thought,
part.
yeah.
It was very similar to the non-podcast part.
Yeah.
It's just
when we were talking about the German word, I was going to...
Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
No, but
we were talking about Schadenfreude and the
Yeah.
yours, and I was going to say that shits and giggles
Yeah.
sounds like a German word.
it should be.
Yeah.
Shits and giggles.
Put it together. One
It's
word.
a comedy club downtown.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I fucking hate Germany. I'm sorry. Okay. Just I know people are like, how can you hate a whole country? I just can't. I do. Sorry.
You're loud.
Thank
It's
you.
okay.
I am. I never used to, but now I do.
Do whatever you want. Live your dream.
I was in France visiting my kid. Actually, was on a trip to France, southern Ireland, France, a couple of years ago, and I went to meet her to spend a few days with her. And my flight took me Toronto, Frankfurt, Nice, and yeah, it was nice. So we get off, and there was a bit of a delay in one of those, I guess, taking off or landing in Germany, and. So we get there, and there's about 10 or 15 of us that have to quickly get off the plane and go get our connection. There's time, but not a lot of time. So there's somebody from the airline that sees us, and then we follow them down a corridor. We go running. We got to get to the plane, and then there's a transport that takes us from one terminal to the next terminal, and as they're ushering us onto the train, I'm like, not again, Germany.
Oh,
Not again.
Wow.
Fool me once.
Okay.
That's a real comedic moment. there.
Nice.
Not me. I've seen this before. It's a true
are you
story.
doing that?
Am I at?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
That's a good bit.
I've been to that Frankfurt airport. I remember landing, and there was a Papa woman with beer
course.
steins
Yeah.
and big schnitzel. Like, it was so stereo. It was like seeing a Maori as soon as you landed.
You know,
She had a big schnitzel.
I do this
I
bit about.
remember her.
That's right. Where are we going to eat tonight? Well, that's another thing I said. You know, if you really think about it, nobody's that big a fan of Germany. I mean, like, it's not like people go, "Oh, what are you in the mood for?" I'm in the mood for some nice German food. No one ever says that. Oh, I could go for some schnitzel. Anyway,
They've opened a nice new German Chinese restaurant.
oh yeah, what's it called?
30 minutes later, you're hungry for power.
Ah, I love it.
Oh, hey.
Phil's clapping downstairs. So Fred used to tell me for years he would go on these vacations to someplace warm, you know, the tropical places. I don't know, I'm blanking on it. And he would say it was just aggravated him because every morning the Germans would get up, the tourists would get up, and they would go and put the towels down on the lounges, and they would save the best lounges by the pool, right?
that's not
And he was
allowed,
like, it's
no.
fucking driving me nuts. I go, hey, Fred, listen, we've forgiven him. It's time for you to move on from the towels. I do this other joke in my act about how one of my best friends, his name is Klaus, and we used to joke about how no one names their kid Howard anymore. No, not since 1960s. And he said, well, yeah, in Canada Klaus isn't a very common name, but in Germany it's still very common. And I said, well, in Germany Howard used to be a lot more common as well.
Oh, gee. That's not bad.
It's fucking funny.
Bill, would you know the musket, Howard? Do you remember the musket?
The musket.
The actual gun, the musket?
No, the place.
No.
Where was it? Mississauga?
No, industrial area just off Kipling up here.
The
like
musket.
5 minutes from here.
No.
When you turn in, there's all those Kipling tire and all that. Somewhere
Okay.
in there.
Where there's a bakery. There's a bread.
It was next to the Dimfelmeyers.
Dimfelmeyers. Okay.
And it was called the Musket.
Oh, I think I do. Okay, yeah, I do remember
And
that.
it was German restaurant called the Musket. So you walk in, and the motif is like muskets and old horse collars and nothing German.
Yeah.
And a wagon wheel.
Sure, of course.
And Tiffany lamps like you find in a pool hall hanging over. But it was called the Musket. And I got to tell you, the best, World Cup,
Yeah.
every German is at the Musket watching it on TV. It was red cabbage and schnitzels, and it was the best. And
authentic. Yeah.
suddenly closed down. It's gone. But it was for years. It was the best German place, and it was stuck in an industrial area in Etobicoke. It's called the Musket.
Yeah, you guys are like, because you're an Etobicoke guy, and
Grew up here. Yeah.
are you still living?
I live in Brampton.
Oh, that's
up
right,
with
that's
Fred.
right.
That's
Yeah,
why
you're
we have to
Fred
wear the
one.
surgical masks.
That's
to-
right.
Coming from Brampton, everybody has.
I should just show you. Before you guys leave, I'll show you a picture of Fred in his fucking surgical mask. Just unbelievable. I came in late, too, because he left he left late. Anyway, he just sent me this picture of him on the plane. I said, well, my life is never going to be the same.
How many other things did Fred do that his wife suggested Fred normally wouldn't do?
Everything. Everything. He has no, he can't say no.
They've been married for like 40 years.
They've been married for
haven't
40
they?
years,
Yeah.
and
I don't
she's
wanna
a
open that
solid
up, but-
10.
Okay.
And he's squeaking it out like the rest of us around 5'6", maybe, with his hair done. And she's a smoke show and has been since the day he met her. So yeah, he says yes to the doll. Believe me, I would. We all would. You've seen her. It's stunning.
Yep, she's a wonderful person.
Yeah,
wonderful
yeah.
lady.
Do you have something? Have you figured out something yet?
Well, yeah, no, we were already talking about the Super Bowl, but
Yes.
Trump thanked Kansas State last night. That was kind of hilarious.
Kansas City, Kansas, he thanked, right?
Yeah.
State,
He doesn't care.
He just, totally didn't.
just doesn't
he just
care
made the
anymore.
mistake in a tweet and didn't care at all.
No.
But he did correct it, I believe.
He took the other one down, is what he did.
Yeah. But anyway, that was ridiculous. And then I did have another good story, actually. There was a video last week from somewhere near Calgary in Alberta where a police officer, it was actually a really cool video, had to use a shotgun to separate two deer that had their
Locked
horns had
antlers,
locked.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a really cool it's a really cool
he
video.
separated them by killing one of them with
No,
a
he-
shotgun?
He shot off one of the antlers.
Oh.
So they could separate, and so it was like the only way he could do it. He was the only one on scene, and it's an interesting. It was a global news video that was out this week, so it was pretty big.
That's
video
pretty
that got
good
passed
shooting.
around.
It was
That
buckshot.
is, here, you want to let these people in, Sean? This
can
is
do
this
that.
group of people. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Dog attack.
Yeah, this is every podcast should have a dog greeting people at the door. Don't rush.
It's nice. It's
hey, nice
homey. It's
people.
lovely.
Don't worry about it. When I said we had other guests arriving, I meant just people coming into the studio. I wasn't gonna throw you on the air. You don't want to be part of this nonsense. By the way, can we talk about that?
What? Oh, sorry. It's a habit I have on air of using this thing. It's a
What is it?
It's a telescopic back scratcher.
Okay.
And
Did you get that in the back of a
metal-
comic book?
And it's metal. It's pen size and
Yeah.
a telescope. So a long time ago, I'm driving to work in St. Catharines. It's wintertime. I got a parka. It's open in the car, and I got itchy back, and I can't scratch it in the car. And I'm doing 130 in fast lane, and I was like, "What do I do? Do I pull over?" It's not happening. So I'm like, "What do I have in my car that I could scratch my back with because it's driving me crazy?" So I reach into the back seat and I pull out the scraper brush.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
So then I'm thinking brush side or scraper side.
I would go brush side.
Well, it's a bad itch, so I went scraper side.
Oh, you did.
So I get it down
You were trying to get the dermis.
into the shirt,
Yeah.
and you know that feeling?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, I got it. And then I go to pull it out, and it's stuck. And it's like it's not coming out unless I'm going to rip my shirt. So I'm driving with one hand. I got this thing, so I let go of it. So people are driving by me, and I see this big brush coming out of my head,
Yeah.
and this thing coming out of my back. And so I finally get it out, and I'm like, well, that was ridiculous. So my show starts, and I'm like, well, here's a funny thing that happened. I put a brush down the back, and a listener named Lori sent me this the very next day.
Wow.
Said, keep this handy so you don't get a ice scraper winter brush stuck down your shirt going 130 on the QE.
It just goes to show you, Bill, everyone is leading lives.
Right.
Everyone has something going on in their lives
Where you
that
going?
we could never imagine. You look at a guy, Larry Fedor,
Right.
successful broadcaster, and then
Yeah.
you find out, like, oh, he's got, like, itchy back syndrome.
Got an epidermis issue.
He's got like, because what I want him to talk about, he mentioned to Bill and I that he's got not just one.
Right.
He has one.
So-
4.
I love them so
Four,
much
yeah.
now. Home Hardware, bless you. This is not a free plug. I just love that store.
It's home with a handyman.
They have them for like $1.50 at the thing. I bought like 4 of them, and I have one in every room and in the car and in my briefcase. This is the original one, and it became this thing where I had it on air as a thing to play with, like instead of a pen or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's like I play with this. It's whatever this is called, a paper.
It's a clip of some
It's a
sort.
clip.
Yeah,
It's like
big-
a
it's like big
black
clip, though.
industrial paper when you want to group a bunch of pages together. I just play with this all the time.
Yeah, so that's become my thing. I didn't mean to turn it into a whole.
The only thing is I don't take this everywhere I go. I'm okay with it just on
may
the
I
air.
suggest?
Yeah, I suppose. What's going
Had
on?
you had that in yoga?
Perhaps I could have avoided a terrible situation. So have you seen anyone about this?
What?
About the furniture?
Compulsive scratching, you
Compulsive
mean?
back scratching? Well,
I compulsively play with it, but how many times this morning have I used it to actually scratch myself? That's the other thing. Now I use it to scratch my face in places where I actually can reach.
well,
Which
the question isn't how many
because
times.
it's right here.
No, I think,
so I might as well.
Listen, I'm not judging, but the question is, I am actually. But the question isn't how many times have you used the back scratcher. The fact that you brought it with you, I think, says.
Because it's part of the kit. I have a pen, I have a big felt marker, and I have a back scratcher. These are just little. What? It's not touchstones. What are that called when you need to? It's
bingo
your paper
charms.
But why the vibrator?
bingo
That's
charm?
what.
The vibrator?
Why the vibrator? I don't
Separate
understand
story.
that.
Hey, come on, these are potential.
I'm sorry.
We don't. No one needs to hear.
Apology.
That's
Sorry about
that's
that.
not. He's not part of the show.
No.
Mostly.
I'm leaving.
That's a separate story. Also involves
I think it's funny is, like,
driving.
But the we all of a sudden Brio's the most discussed. No, listen, Larry, whatever it is you need to help you with your back issues.
All right.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
William. All the best to you.
Been a pleasure.
I can't thank you guys enough for coming in. Baby Sean Sargent, we'll see you tomorrow. Dan Duran, guest fretting for the next couple of days. And as I mentioned, on Thursday, Scary Pete's going to be here. We're going to have some musical performances from his daughter, who's just been signed and is an amazingly talented human being. Boys, good seeing you again, all right?
You as well.
Very
Thank you.
lovely.
Thank you
Very
so much.
good. All right. We'll see you all tomorrow.